11:51 at night. My phone screen lit up in the dark apartment like a blade slicing through the night. A message from my mother, short, cold, and sharp like a paper cut. We've agreed. From now on, you are no longer part of the family. Don't come to any gatherings. No ellipsis. No call. Just a digital exile sentence. A few seconds later, the heart icon from my sister popped up under that message, as if betrayal could also be turned into a team sport. I didn't cry. Didn't reply. I simply opened my laptop, scrolled through every bill, every payment. I had broken my back covering for them for so many years, and one by one, I hit cancel. By 12:03, their entire world of convenience began shutting down piece by piece in silence, and for the first time, I realized I also had a switch that could turn them off from my life. When the screen finally went dark, my apartment grew heavy enough to crush the air. The steady hum of the fridge, the ticking on the wall, sounded like unwilling witnesses. I sat there, my hand still on the keyboard, my heartbeat slowing to something frightening. Anger this time didn't scream. Before I tell you what happened after the moment I shut their whole lives off, tell me where you're watching this video from and at what time. I read every comment, because sometimes just knowing someone else is awake with you is enough to keep you standing. If you've ever been treated by your own family like a burden or a walking wallet, hit like and subscribe so I know you're not alone in your journey to reclaim your respect. Now then, let's return to the moment I realized. A message can sever blood, but truth is what severs chains. The apartment in West Highlands sank into the faint yellow glow of the floor lamp. After the final cancel clicks, the space around me thickened. The sound of a snowplow on the street drifted in distant and cold while inside. Only the fridge fan hummed, steady and small, like the house itself was breathing as it watched me. I leaned back in my chair, feeling as if I had just unplugged an entire family I had been keeping alive. In the black screen, reflecting my face, no anger, no trembling. There was only a clarity sharp enough to be unsettling. For many years, I thought I was a daughter. But tonight, as the apartment went silent like an interrogation room, I understood. I was only their financial employee. Until the moment I opened the transaction history, I pulled the laptop closer and entered the password. The bank page flashed open, bright white. The very first line made me freeze. $138, Golden Gas Station, 214A. I had never been to Golden at dawn, and I definitely hadn't filled gas for anyone at that hour. I scrolled down. $122, insurance autopay, $94, utility transfer, $228, family emergency. All of them are linked to my account. My pulse slowed but sharpened. I no longer felt hurt, only the logic of a case file. Every number appeared like a fingerprint. Every transaction, a story they assumed I would never question. And then I saw a payment that only one person in the house could have made. A charge of $312 appeared. With the note, Brielle card on file. Brielle, the little sister who had just tapped a heart under our family's exile sentence. Somehow, my card had been saved in her phone. And I, the person they had just declared no longer, family had been paying for that ingratitude for who knows how long. I leaned back in the chair. I didn't scream. I simply stared at the screen, where cold numbers exposed a kind of betrayal no words could fully describe. And that was the moment I understood. What I had just seen was only the first layer of the truth. I opened the bottom drawer beneath my desk, the place where I kept the silver metal box. It was so old the edges were slightly chipped, but the lock was still as firm as the day I bought it at 20 years old. When I lifted the lid, the smell of old paper mixed with dust pulled me back to years I thought I had already buried. Inside were dozens of bills folded into thirds, arranged neatly the way I always did. Property tax, electricity bills, car insurance, emergency fees, the cost of repairing the roof after the storm in 2018, all under my name, yet all for the house in Golden, the house I was never allowed to call home. The numbers had faded over time, but the feeling in my chest as I read them was still as sharp as the first day. A type of silent pain, without noise, without witnesses. And then, I pulled out the very first bill that made me realize I wasn't just a daughter. I was 26. My income barely covered rent for a tiny apartment in Denver. But that night, my mother called in tears. "Elena, we're about to lose the house. They sent a foreclosure notice. Help me just this once." I swear. I believed her. I always believed her. I took a high-interest loan from a finance company and transferred every remaining cent I had, and even skipped meals for weeks to make up the difference. Patricia called back, her voice warm and grateful enough that I truly thought everything would change. But I didn't know. The first time I saved them was the lifetime invitation to carry all their burdens. After that came Brielle's car insurance. Then her semester at community college, where she attended for only 2 weeks before dropping out. Then there was the endless production line of emergencies the Marrow family seemed to manufacture like a business. Every time I helped, Patricia said the same sentence. "You're the only one I can depend on." It sounded like affection, but it was actually a velvet-wrapped chain. 6 months ago, I went home for dinner at Patricia's invitation. The house in Golden looked like something out of a TV show. A long wooden table, golden candles, and napkins folded into triangles. But the atmosphere was thick with the kind of truth everyone knew but no one spoke. Patricia looked me up and down before adjusting my posture in front of the relatives. "Elena, sit up straight. You're the eldest daughter, don't look stiff like some office worker." Brielle bragged about her work trip to California. I knew well it was just a week in Vegas with her wealthy friends. Gerald sipped his wine with that fake gentle demeanor that always strangled me. "You should smile more. Elena, nobody wants to live with a serious woman all day." Everyone laughed. I swallowed the ball of fire whole. I stayed silent, just like every other time. But tonight, sitting here in my apartment, I realized that silence was the very thing that had been killing me the slowest. And then, there was a detail I will never forget. The moment that showed me they never saw me as part of that dinner table. That evening, when I stood to get more water, I heard Brielle whisper to Patricia, "I don't get why you let Elena butt into family matters. She doesn't even live here." Patricia replied without a second of hesitation, "What does she know? When the time comes, she'll pay again anyway." I froze behind the door. Not a drop of love. Not a drop of respect. They saw me as an emotional ATM. Nothing more. Turns out, I never belonged there. I was only their financial lifeline, easy to use, easy to replace. And when I pieced all those clues together, I understood. What awaited me wasn't just betrayal. It was a scheme that had been growing for years. The next morning, Denver's light filtered through the bedsheets, making everything look far too peaceful compared to the chaos waiting outside. The phone began ringing at 7:12 a.m. First was Mom, then Dad, then Brielle. A chain of familiar names flashing like a fire alarm system. But I let it ring until each call died on its own. I stood in the kitchen, sipping a hot mouthful of coffee, listening to the ringtone fade, a type of chaos I used to run toward to extinguish. But today, I simply watched. When I finally turned my phone on, the screen was filled with notifications like exploding exclamation marks. "Mom. Elena. What is happening? Mom. Why is the electricity cut? Mom. Call me back. Now. Dad. Elena. Your mother is losing it. Call to smooth things out." Not a single apology. Not a single acknowledgement of what they did. Only commands as always. I scrolled the messages to the bottom of the screen. They still didn't know. Today was not a smooth things out day anymore. 9 minutes later, it was Brielle's turn to launch her attack. Her messages came in like she was auditioning for Victim of the Year. Brielle. Elena. What are you doing? You're ruining the family. Then, Brielle. Mom just said those things because she was angry. Don't overreact. I reread the messages not to double-check, but to confirm one truth. This family had never given me a proper apology. They all followed the same script. Shift responsibility. Make me feel guilty. And finally, drag me back into the role of the obedient one who endures. Not anymore. I locked the screen, pulled my laptop closer, and took a deep breath. It was time to begin the first forensic accounting session of my own family. I opened a new spreadsheet. The file name: Marrow Reconciliation Report. I typed the first lines. Property tax golden. Colorado year 2018. Car insurance 2019 to 2021. Emergency loan $3,200. Roof repair deposit $2,650. Brielle's tuition $6,000 plus $6,000 plus $6,000. Dad's medical bills $1,470. I typed until my hands trembled slightly. Every number had a story behind it. And every story was a cut I had accepted, all to hold together a family bond that, now I knew, only I had ever held on to. As I scrolled down to line 41, a strange feeling washed over me. No more heaviness. No more pain. Only clarity. I wasn't punishing them. I was calculating. And that's when I saw a transaction I had never made. A charge of $287 from my secondary card sent to Summit Lifestyle Retreat. I had never heard that name. I searched it. It was a luxury salon in Boulder, and the transaction history showed it was a recurring payment every 30 days, beginning nearly a year ago. And the secondary cardholder? Elena Marrow. I leaned back in my chair and laughed a sharp, glass-like laugh. They didn't just use my money. They lived lavishly off my money. The pieces dropped into place. The dinner. The blame-shifting texts. Their belief that me paying was obvious. No, this wasn't accidental. It was a mechanism. A habit. A system built on me. And that was the moment I understood. They weren't afraid of losing me. They were afraid of losing their financial supply. And for the first time in my life, the power shifted to my side. That afternoon, when Denver's sunlight shifted into a pale gold as if filtering through fine dust, my phone buzzed again, not in single rings, but continuously, urgently, as if someone were pounding on my front door. On the screen, a string of familiar names. Mom. Dad. Brielle. Mom. 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 Seeing the stacked missed call notifications reminded me of the nights I ran out of meetings to answer Mom's crying calls, and the times I pulled over on the side of the road to scramble money together for them. But today, I stood still, my hand resting on the cold stone countertop. The last ring faded, leaving a hollow silence inside my chest. Not empty because of loss, but because I no longer had the reflex to bow my head. And then came the first message from Patricia, the true beginning of the war. An email from Patricia arrived at 2:41 p.m. Subject line: You are not allowed to do this. Inside was a 3-paragraph sermon. You embarrassed me. You are destroying this family. Everything I do is for you. No apology. No acknowledgement of having disowned me past midnight. Only one thing. She was trying to rewrite the truth in a way that benefited her. I read every line the way someone reads a contract full of violations, no emotions left. Only cold awareness. The email ended with, "Call me back immediately. I command it." I leaned back in my chair and let out a small laugh. Her orders no longer held legal or emotional authority over me. A voice message from Brielle popped up right after the email. "Elena, you're taking this too far. Mom didn't mean it. It was all just a misunderstanding. And you're making everything worse." Her voice stretched out, a little shaky, as if she were afraid but not afraid of losing me. Afraid of the bills she had been signing with the secondary card. She continued, "I'm sorry if you think I'm greedy, but you know how Mom is. You have to understand her." No, I didn't have to do anything anymore. And then another email arrived, exposing their true nature. The second email came from Gerald, the man who always stood behind his wife, silent like a breathing statue. It contained only one sentence. "Elena, you have to understand. Your mother can't handle this shock. You don't want her hospitalized, do you?" I set the phone down slowly. They did not say, "We're sorry. We were wrong. We want you back." No. Everything revolved around money, comfort, and the conveniences they had grown used to siphoning from me for so many years. I glanced at the laptop screen still open to the Marrow reconciliation report. The numbers lay there, silent, yet saying more than any fake apology ever could. I touched one line in the sheet. Support fund non-refundable $3,200. That year, I had to eat instant noodles for nearly 2 months. There was a truth I had never dared to face, until now. They did not love me the way a family loves a child. They only needed me as an emergency financial system on standby. And when that source vanished, they panicked not because their hearts were breaking, but because their wallets no longer stretched. That was the moment I knew. It was time to call someone who understood the law better than they did, and better than I did. That night, I tapped the number of Julia Rhodes. I sat on the windowsill, watching the snow fall in tiny flecks over West Highlands. Denver this time of year had a kind of light that was both cold and clean, making every decision feel sharper. I opened my contacts. The name Julia Rhodes sat between 2 entries I no longer considered family. I tapped call. "Rhodes Law Group. This is Julia." Her voice was low, steady, and unwavering. The voice of someone who had spoken to too many victims and too many manipulators. "I'm Elena Marrow," I said. "I think I need help." "No, please." No pleading. No softening of tone. Julia responded immediately, as if she had already anticipated this call. "You've waited long enough. Tell me everything." I explained in 4 minutes. The message disowning me, the years of paying their debts, the bills under my name, the barrage of calls that morning. Julia went silent for a moment, the kind of silence belonging to someone assembling a puzzle in their mind. "Elena," she said, "this is no longer a family issue. This is a pattern, and patterns are handled with law." I exhaled slowly. The word pattern sliced through the fog like a blade. "Do you have records? Bills? Or old emails?" "All of them," I answered. "In a metal box." "Good. Open it. Let's begin." I didn't know. What Julia was about to see would open a much darker door. Julia didn't waste time. Step 1. Gather everything. Emails. Bills. Transaction histories. Bank statements. Every time you transferred money to them. "Even the small amounts?" I asked. "Especially the small amounts," Julia replied. "People who are used to living off others rarely leave big evidence, but they leave plenty of little trails." I opened the metal box and set it on the table. The room was so quiet I could hear the paper brushing as I lifted each stack of documents. Julia continued. "Step 2. Build a timeline. Date, amount, reason, who received it. I want to see the shape of this story. It's not chaos," I said. "I kept everything." "That's not normal behavior for someone being exploited," Julia said. "That's survival instinct." Her words chilled my spine. I opened my laptop and clicked on the folder Marrow Records. Inside were 14 PDF tax bills, 27 emergency emails from Patricia, 48 small transactions under $300, 3 tuition payments for Brielle, and 1 note file I wrote in 2020 nay. Do not forget. This money does not belong to you. I reread each email from Mom. Elena, please. I have no one else to ask. Elena, send the money before 5 p.m. It's urgent. Elena, just this once. I promise. That once lasted 7 years. Julia said through the phone. Elena, don't read with emotion. Read like a forensic analyst, not a daughter. I exhaled again and typed into Excel. Date, amount, pattern, behavior. The more I typed, the clearer I could see a map I had blindly followed for years. Until Julia asked me to open a bill. I had never paid attention to, can you open the file insurance? 2019. PDF? Julia asked. I opened it. It was the 2019 car insurance bill. I remembered clearly that year I had to split the payments into parts just to make the deadline. Julia caught something instantly, something I had never noticed. Elena, why does the insurance billing address say Boulder, not Golden? I stared at the screen. I've never lived in Boulder. I know, Julia said. But Brielle lived in Boulder in 2019. Didn't she? I swallowed hard. So, you're saying? I'm saying, Julia finished. You paid insurance on a car you weren't allowed to touch. And they deliberately used Brielle's address so you wouldn't discover it. I sat still. It felt like someone had opened a door I had avoided looking at for years. Elena, Julia said slowly, this is no longer ingratitude. This is misrepresentation. And sometimes, it's fraud. And that was the moment I understood. They weren't just exploiting me. They had broken the law. And the worst part of the truth was still ahead. Denver lit up early that day. The golden glow from Larimer Street spilled through my apartment window, casting light over the documents scattered across my table like remnants of an unsolved case. Julia called back exactly at 7:12. Elena, I need to see the rest of the bills, she said, her voice steady, unshaken by the chaos I had sent her. I turned on my webcam. Julia examined the screen like a doctor reading a CT scan. This kind of evidence, she said, is not accidental. It has a pattern. I swallowed. So, they did this intentionally? Julia exhaled softly. Elena, this isn't ingratitude. This is exploitation. The word dropped between us like a stone. And then Julia zoomed into a document I had never dared to look at closely. She opened the file. Property tax, 2020. PDF. Elena, she asked, did you pay this? Yes, I said. But Mom told me it was to stop the house from foreclosure. Julia shook her head. That's not the issue. Look at the signature. I looked. It was my name, Elena Marrow, but the strokes were rounder, longer, and leaning far to the right. It wasn't my signature. Not even close. Elena, Julia said slowly. They signed your name on a legal document without permission. This is falsifying a signature. I froze. Every cell in my body seemed to harden. They forged my signature? Not just that. Julia continued. This payment wasn't used to save the house. It was transferred straight to your mother's credit card. The room seemed to shrink. I felt like I was staring into a version of the truth they had hidden for years behind love and guilt. My phone buzzed. First was Patricia. Elena, I'm sorry about the message that night. Don't think I meant it. I was just upset. I didn't respond. 2 minutes later, Brielle. Elena, please don't make this a big deal. I just accidentally used the card. Everyone's freaking out. Accidentally used the card? Julia let out a short, humorless laugh. Classic gaslighting pattern, she said. When the abuser fears truth, they perform victimhood. Then came Gerald. Elena, you're overreacting. Let's talk like a family. No need to involve lawyers. Julia heard it and responded immediately through the phone. Every family is worth talking to unless they commit crimes. She opened the next file. Trust fund, withdrawal, PDF. Elena, she asked, have you ever withdrawn $16,500 from your grandmother's inheritance account? Of course not, I said. Julia tapped the corner of the screen. Then why is the signature here? Yours? I stared. This time the signature was even worse messy. Crooked. Like someone tried to imitate it and gave up halfway. This withdrawal paid for their kitchen remodel, Julia said. Right? I remembered. Those years they bragged about their new kitchen. Quartz countertops, double ovens, and a turquoise backsplash. They never said, it was paid with my inheritance. Elena, Julia said, this is no longer misrepresentation. This is forgery. And if it involves the account of a deceased person, it may be estate fraud. The air in the room thickened. Julia wasn't done. She had one final document she wanted me to see. She opened the file. Statement, 2018. PNG. Do you see anything? She asked. I looked. The familiar last digits of my account. The transaction date. And the description line, emergency transfer, requested by M. Elena Marrow. I had never requested that transfer. Elena, Julia said, this is the point where we move the case into criminal-level review. The room grew so silent I could hear my own breathing. Let me ask you honestly, Julia said. Are you ready to face this? Because what they've done can take them to criminal court. I looked at the documents spread across the table, no longer scattered memories, but evidence of a life drained to the bone. I nodded. Julia, I'm ready. And I had no idea. The remaining guilt my family carried was exactly what would change the entire case. That morning was so quiet. It felt strange that their world was collapsing while mine was finally still. Denver's light poured through the window, spreading a soft golden line across the wooden table. I hadn't finished half my tea when my phone buzzed an email from Julia. Subject: all notices sent. I opened it. 3 critical documents. Demand for restitution. Investigative report on forged signatures. Temporary asset freeze order. I read each line, feeling everything quietly closing behind me. No noise. No storm. Only a cold, beautiful clarity like winter morning light. Julia called, her voice steady and firm. Elena, from now on you don't respond to anyone. I'll handle all communication. I just said okay, softly. No more words needed. The apartment felt like it was holding its breath with me. 9:17 a.m. The first message from Patricia. Elena, don't misunderstand me. We need to talk. No apology. No accountability. Just the usual vague blame disguised as misunderstanding. 9:23 a.m. Brielle, you're destroying the whole family. Why did you send a lawyer? I looked at the message, then locked my screen. In the room, the wind slipping through the doorframe felt more honest than anything they said. 9:30 a.m. Gerald left a voicemail. Elena, you're overreacting. Your mother and I only want to keep this family stable. Don't escalate things. Stable? The family they spoke of was only stable when I was the one silently paying for it. I didn't call back. And then at noon, Julia found something that froze the air in my apartment. 12:04 p.m. You need to stay calm, Julia said the moment I answered. I just reread your grandmother's inheritance documents. I sat down. Elena, your name was moved from the primary beneficiary position. I felt the blood drain from my face. And not just that, Julia continued. The The signature authorizing the change doesn't match any sample of yours. Someone signed for you. The apartment felt a few degrees colder. The withdrawals were also broken into smaller amounts below the bank's alert threshold, Julia said. One by one. Methodical and intentional. I leaned back in my chair. All the pieces from all those years, the cries for help, the endless emergencies, the nights they called just to ask for more, suddenly aligned. It wasn't chaos. It was a plan. 1p. Gerald called 8 consecutive times. Messages poured in like hail. Elena, this can be fixed. Don't embarrass the family. Your mother is falling apart. The bank is freezing the accounts. Well, repay it. Just stop this. I didn't reply. I forwarded everything to Julia. It felt strange, as if, for the first time in my life, my silence carried more force than shouting ever could. I stood by the window, watching snow fall lightly onto the roof across the street. Denver had a peculiar kind of stillness. Not empty, but as if holding a quiet secret. I placed my hand on the table, feeling calm spreading through me. No anger, no resentment, just a clarity as deep as water. Outside, a car moved along the street, its sound stretching like a thin line, not breaking the silence, only emphasizing it. I understood. The years of chaos were over. What remained now was only the truth. 5 p.m. The doorbell rang long and urgent. I looked through the peephole. Patricia. She stood there, eyes red, mascara smeared, coat unzipped. She looked like someone running from the very thing she created. Elena, please open the door, she rasped. You have to listen. I didn't mean it. Everything got out of my hands. I opened the door, but only a crack. Between us was a small space, yet dense with truth. You know you're the strongest one, Patricia said. I need you. The family needs you. No, I replied slowly. They need someone who doesn't know how to say no. Her face tightened, half pleading, half desperate. Elena, don't do this. We are family. Family? I looked straight into her eyes. Family doesn't forge my signature. Patricia froze. I handed her the envelope of officially signed documents. What is this? She whispered. Official notice, I said. From now on, everything goes through my lawyer. Her face drained of color. You're tearing this family apart. I shook my head gently. I'm just stopping myself from saving a family that destroyed itself long ago. I closed the door. Not hard. Not loud. Evening light settled in the room like a thin layer of dust. I leaned my forehead against the door, not from exhaustion, but because for the first time, I felt free. And I didn't know that very night. A call from the courthouse would change the entire direction of this story. Denver's morning was as light as a breath. The first sunlight fell in thin lines across the wooden floor, touching my bare feet like a quiet greeting. My phone rested on the table. Screen dark. Silent, no urgent messages. No shaky voices begging for rescue. For the first time in years, I drank my coffee without staring at a bank statement. No one needed a temporary loan. No one used my name to sign anything. No one treated me like a life raft they were entitled to cling to. My small apartment suddenly felt bigger. Or maybe my chest finally stopped shrinking. 7:42 a.m. The phone lit up with a short, simple subject line. Subject. Everything is officially closed. I opened the email. Julia wrote briefly, just like she always did. Case fully completed. All wrongful funds resolved. Misappropriated assets restored. Signature-related charges will be handled separately. I no longer had any ties to my family. I placed my hand on the table and closed my eyes for a few seconds. Not joy. Not pain. Just Lightness. A kind of lightness I once thought I would never feel again. I opened my laptop. The old spreadsheet appeared full of notes. Tuition, taxes, home repairs, emergencies, advances, dates, amounts, a diary of depletion. I scrolled and selected everything. Pressed delete. The screen became blank. Just a wide, endless, white. I stared at it for a long moment, then let out a quiet laugh. Not because I was happy, but because I finally realized this was the real shape of my life when no one was hanging on it. In the afternoon, I went to the West Cemetery where my grandmother rested. A bouquet of white tulips in my hand, I walked slowly along the tree-shaded path. "It's done now, Grandma," I whispered. The wind brushed past me, touching my shoulder like a gentle reassurance. I laid the flowers down, looking at her name carved into the stone. For years, they had used the last gift she left me to prop up the things they refused to face. She had never abandoned me. I had simply forgotten to stand with myself. The evening sun lowered, covering the entire cemetery in a soft, warm glow, a kind of peace I never thought I deserved. On the way home, I thought of an old saying, "Family is the place that always welcomes you." But the truth is, family only means something when they don't demand you pay the price for their existence. Sometimes, to find peace, you have to close the door that has allowed others to walk in and take pieces of you, over and over again. If you've ever been dismissed, used, or treated as the backup plan by your own family, leave a comment, even just a single dot, so I know you're not alone. And please like and subscribe so I can keep telling you more meaningful and powerful stories. See you in the next video.